Wow. Okay, so this is very exciting for me because these two women are some of the most incredible women that I have the privilege of knowing and growing with. So I do want to let you both take a moment to introduce yourselves. I feel like, of course, Victoria did a little brief intro, but I would love for everybody to really get to know you. So, Vera, can we start with you? Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to this event and for supporting other women and bringing your energy. My name is Vera Anderson, and I am a chair for Tiger 21, which is a peer-to-peer community for ultra-high net worth individuals. That's a very exclusive club of about 1,800 international worldwide members who collectively control about $195 billion worth of assets. So if you want to be in a room of people who know, that's the room to be in. And I think we all strive to be in that room in one capacity or another. But my background is I started in private equity pretty early on at the age of 26. And we've done over 300 million in acquisitions. Subsequent to that, I also raised capital for my own startup businesses to the tune of $5 million. And then I transitioned into coaching because I realized that what actually matters is not the strategy, but it's the mindset that you carry with you. And you have to be in alignment with where you are in that stage of life in order to really fulfill your desires, fulfill your dreams, and accomplish everything that you want. So that's what I help first-generation wealth creators do, is transition from being an operator and founder to then becoming a great investor, which takes a very different mindset, to then becoming a steward of the family enterprise, which allows you to pass on your legacy to the next generation successfully. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ariana Tadler. I am a 3-decade-plus trial lawyer. I've taken on the likes of some of the largest tech companies in the world, specifically actually representing you, and you probably don't even know it. All of those data breaches, that was me on the other side, kind of coming in and saving the day. Oftentimes, you don't even know what's happening, and there are people like myself who've spent over 3 decades working to represent the underserved and the underrepresented. I'm now in a transition for my career. I'm a coach and a professional speaker. I also launched, while practicing law and actually preparing cases for trial, a data hosting, management, and consulting company within the context of a law firm. That company was known as Meta eDiscovery. We spun it out in 2015. We sold it through a private equity transaction in 2022. And now, like I said, I'm building something new, and I'm so honored to know Maggie. Maggie has encouraged me throughout this process to really put myself out there as a coach, because I've mentored and coached so many people who are now phenoms. Most of them are women. Women who are phenomenal marketing strategists, people who started out as photographers and now run some of the best videography and photography companies around the world. And also, if you don't know her, Grace Macar, who came into the space as a sort of soft skill consultant and now has really gone viral, and the biggest and best companies are bringing her in to transform teams to really encourage community. So I really have the privilege here to be in awe of Maggie and so many of you. I'm probably one of the eldest people in the room, which makes me really excited because it means you're in the right place. You're doing all the things that somebody like myself 5, 10, 15 years ago probably couldn't have dreamt of. And you're here learning on the spot. And if you follow me, you'll hear that I speak about choosing curiosity over fear, leaning in and learning up. So thank you for doing the work.
Okay, so this panel is all about the fact that power is contagious, and we're going to dissect that a little bit. So my first question to both of you is where have you been most misread as a woman in power? And what did that teach you?
Well, I have two answers for that question, because the first one is obviously everywhere in all the ways. Being a woman in private equity at a very young age, I walk into the room and the people thought I was executive assistant. And when I would sit down at the negotiating table, they would be taken aback. And mind you, I had no business being there, but I said, why the hell not? So I just decided I'm going to be a partner and showed up. So from that perspective, I think it's advantageous when people take you not to be who you really are and not to see your true value and power, because you can use it to your advantage. But the other side of that question is really, if you're concerned about being misinterpreted, you're looking for external permission, which none of us need. We don't need anybody else's approval. We don't need their permission. It's really all about how do you feel about yourself and what's the inner dialogue that you're having with yourself. Because let's be honest, in today's day and age, with all the technology that we have, with all the tools, resources, and access, there is no ceiling for us women. There are billionaires, female billionaires, who have made it before their 30s. And if they can do it, why not us? Why not any one of us? So the only limitations that we have, any one of us has, is this internal negotiation of what's my worth, do I want to be visible, and seeking external approval. So if you eliminate all of that.
Ariana, I'd like to throw the same question to you, because you have been in quite a lot of rooms where, especially like in law and in your history in law and your career, where for many women, they will never step foot into some of those rooms, or maybe, you have in your career experienced this shift, I would say, especially for yourself, then owning your own law firm. So I would love to dissect that and understand, like, what was that journey like for you? And, would you also sympathize maybe with some of the things that Vera just mentioned?
Oh, I'm totally aligned with what Vera has shared. And for me, I think the most helpful thing I can share with you is just to share a story, right? As a professional speaker and quite frankly, as a trial lawyer, we're storytellers. We need to advocate for our clients, and how do we do that? We tell a story and we hope that we've persuaded, whether it's the judge, the jury, et cetera. So I think my best example is I had been practicing law for about 25 years. I had started at a smaller firm, which I am now of counsel to again because I love them. And it's nice to have multiple hustles, as we know. And then I joined what was then the largest plaintiffs firm in the country. And at the time, I joined really with a sense of mission. Why did I leave the small firm that I loved and went to a larger firm? It was because I had just had my first son. I knew I was destined for excellence in leadership. I knew I couldn't do it as a small firm. I needed resources, and I needed to know that I could leave at a certain hour, go home, be a good mom, and then pick up the ball again and run with it at night because the resources were there. That firm, unfortunately, over the nearly, 25 years that I was there, struggled and suffered with a number of horrors that nobody should ever have to go through, things that suddenly you woke up and either read something on the front page of the New York Times or walked in the door and learned about one calamity after the next. And it was heart-wrenching for me because I had played such a role in building that firm. I was in management by 2004. I hadn't been practicing that many years to be at that level, but they had real confidence in me. And so throughout those calamities, I rebranded the firm 4 times. And I didn't do it alone, right? We don't do things alone. I know it's great to be a founder, and sometimes we have individual founders. We don't do things alone. And I did, though, lead the charge many a time to help in those rebrandings. And on the final rebrand, I brought new partners in, and I was so excited about the new chapter for this firm. And my name went up on the door of that firm. And in 18 months, I walked out the door And I walked out the door on a Friday, and my firm's name, Tadler Law, was up on Monday with a website and a tagline that says, "Own the room." We own the conference room, the boardroom, and the courtroom. And when I did that, not only did I have everything up and running, the firm was on the 19th floor at One Penn Plaza. I went to 36.
That's right.
I will tell you that those new partners had no idea what was coming. They had made me feel as small as I had ever felt in my life. Just 6 months before, I thought I might have a breakdown. I might actually lose it. How could I have wanted to be a lawyer since I was 13? And this is what I'm facing now after having had the best cases and the best clients and the best results and, doing all the things. And that was what was facing me. And instead of crumbling, excuse my French, I said, "Fuck this." And that's what I did. And now Tadler Law still exists. Meanwhile, though, we are also of counsel to the firm where I started because they're really good people and they have great resources. And I know that I have a different calling now, which is to serve emerging leaders, serve women, serve Gen Zs and millennials, people who know in their heart they are destined for leadership, just like I knew, but who are stuck or unsure. And I give them the tools to get to where they're going.
Now, I have to do a little plug for a moment because Ariana is actually a coach on the Zant platform.
Yes,
she
I am.
has just recently opened up some times for our startups and founders in our community. So I will make sure that we share that link to the women in this room, and especially you will get the link, I promise. Ariana, just so motivating and inspiring. And like when I listen to you talk and I listen to you share this story, I also think to myself, this is a curveball question here, but when do you know when to rebrand and when do you know it's time to close down?
I think this is very emblematic of what you've been hearing all day today. You lose that passion. When you are loving what you're doing and you see the firm's name and you talk to the team and you're working with the clients, you just have this level of enthusiasm and your battery is fully charged. It's when it suddenly becomes either not exciting or monotonous or toilsome, or for me, when I start sensing my personal disposition changing in terms of how I'm interacting with people, that's telling me that something is not right. And I do not come from a place of judging the person with whom it's not right. I begin with doing some self-analysis. What am I contributing to this dis-ease, right? Dis-ease. And asking myself, is this actually more about me that either my head or my heart are not in the game?
Now, Vera, you coach first-generation billionaires, okay? When the people closest to power finally have it, what do they tell you it actually is?
Well, as you can imagine, there's different answers for different genders. If any of you are familiar with the show called Billions, anyone? Yeah. So the main character, Bobby, his definition of it is having a few money and being able to use it, right? Despite the consequences. If you look at female founders, what they find to be powerful is the communities that they build and the work family. That's very important, which goes back to all the conversations that we had before. That's why it's so difficult for women in particular to leave their companies and exit their companies, because you're leaving and you're divorcing your work family. And the ultimate answer, and this is something that you will find as you go into the second stage of your life. I think in the first phase of your life, we're all here to prove ourselves. and figure out who we are. But then in the second phase of life, we go into that inward journey, because whatever made us successful, that chase, that hunt, that's no longer enough. So there's that deeper question, the deeper calling that we go into. And if you're looking at what does power mean from that perspective, it's really knowing yourself. It's knowing your worth when you no longer have the title, when you no longer have a company, when you're just you. And being able to confidently walk into any room and just be there.
Thank you. There's a lot here to think about. This is like a very deep conversation, because we really are talking about like some may call it the hidden person of the heart, right? So it's like when I go to sleep at night, when it's just me and there's nobody else around, we're not on stage, there's not a microphone in my hand. Like, who is that person? And that's, I think, is really what we're talking about, the root of power.
Do you love her?
And do you love her? Yes, 100%. And so, Ariana, naturally, and I think it's very obvious, is that you very much exude power, this power in a very feminine way, though. It's still like a feminine power. And I go back to when we first met, which was at the I Will Summit. So for anybody who knows the I Will Summit, okay, woo woo. But at the I Will Summit, we met, and I specifically remember you wearing your red suit and getting up on stage and talking about the power that comes with, like self-branding and walking into a room a certain way. And so I want to talk about that. What does the title, Power is Contagious, what does that mean to you?
It really does mean recognizing the power of proximity, right? So when you are in a room of people that are going to contribute value, and you have the opportunity to also contribute value, optimizing each contribution to determine what is the ultimate sum of the parts and what are you going to do with that. And I see coming into a room, it's not the seat of power that makes it powerful. The seat is access. That's all it is. You got an invitation to be at the seat, or in Vera's example, and my own too, I took a seat. And by the way, I remember being in my 30s. I was named a partner at that firm that I had been at. And a man whispered in my ear before a partners meeting, "Don't take a seat at the table. Why don't you just take a seat, along the perimeter of the fishbowl?" And I remember thinking, oh, well, this is my first moment, right? I have to do the quick assessment, doing the analysis. And I was like, if I do that, I will never get that seat the way I need to take the seat. And I can promise you, they were bent. They were so pissed off. And then they put me in management. And somebody said that again. And I looked at them and I said, "You must have missed the memo. They asked me to be on this committee. Maybe they didn't consult you." And I sat at the table. I also had somebody tell me, "Why don't you be quiet for the first few meetings?" They even hired a consultant who came and chatted with me and said, "Sometimes people feel like you speak too soon." Well, ladies, if I hadn't spoken soon enough, where would I be? Where would you be? So to me, the seat is access. The real power is, what are you going to do with that access? And I just gave you a few anecdotes to show you. Now, you don't want to take a seat at the table and just start yammering. You have to make sure that your contribution is truly valuable. And that's where the power comes from.
So I just recently heard a podcast. I think it was actually on Emma Greed's podcast, but she was interviewing Gary Vee, and he had said it is about staying close to the sun. And so he was saying, yeah, it was Emma Greed, because he said to her, you're Emma Greed. And so a lot of people want access to you. But somebody who really, truly wants access, they need to be blowing up your email, contacting your people, going to your events, and like making it known that that woman wants to be like you and she will do anything to learn from you. And he's like, because they need to be close to the sun. If they want to be Emma Greed, you have to be close to Emma Greed. And it sounds kind of crazy because of who she is right now, because she's really blowing up and all that stuff. But how do women in this room who want access, who maybe feel like they don't know, like, well, how do I get access? Where do I start? Like, how do I get in those rooms? Obviously, we hope that today you meet some really incredible people who can start that for you. But how can they leave today and start gaining access to the right rooms and start getting closer to the sun?
Well, do you want the practical advice?
No, I want you to just tell it like it is.
Skinny.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's how I do it. I manifest things all the time. I was looking on, I think it was Pinterest at the time because it was before Instagram. So on Pinterest, I think it was circa 2018 or something like that. And I saw this picture of yachts in Monaco with a Grand Prix race going on, F1 race. And I'm like, that looks pretty cool. And then I had a call with a friend of mine who lives in Europe. We met at Rich Dad, Poor Dad real estate class. Anybody else? Yep. So he sat next to me through the class. We chatted, got to know each other, exchanged contact information. So we were just catching up. And I said, hey, you weren't at that, Grand Prix thing by any chance, were you? He's like, yeah, I was. I'm like, well, where was my invitation? He's like, come next year. So I flew into Nice the next year. He got me on the yacht, and I watched the Grand Prix from a yacht. Lewis Hamilton won. He was my guy for a very long time, with Mercedes, just to clarify. So how did that all happen? I asked. Well, first I had the intention and intuition, like this is something I want to do. This is somewhere I want to be. And then I asked. And then I showed up. And that's how it happens. And that's how I do everything. Whenever I walk into rooms, whenever I go into conferences, I'm an introvert. Anybody else? Yeah. This was terrifying to me a long time ago, until I realized it's not trying to impress anybody. It's actually just showing up and being myself. And it's also about creating an intention for one connection. All I need from this is one meaningful connection, because from that, everything flows. So can I have one meaningful conversation in a room full of amazing people? Yes. Do I have to talk to 100 people to have that meaningful connection? No. It becomes more manageable for me, for my nervous system. And so that's what I do. I just take it one conversation at a time. But I do set an intention, and then I let it go. Because if you're going to hold on to the outcome, you're going to be stressing about it. That's going to come across, and I guess, and again, energetically, that's not the play. So just be yourself, set an intention, be in a room, and decide what room you want to be in, and go for it.
So I would say you need to keep your head up and your eyes really wide open. I just came from a Legacy Collective program. It's 36 women. We're committed to serve each other for the next year. And it's run by a woman by the name of Lauren Lahav. She's just a phenom. If you don't know her, you must follow her. She's brilliant. And we were talking about the fact that we did a self-protection class. We don't call it self-defense, self-protection class. And we had a former CIA or security guy who came in, and he didn't just teach us the physicality. He taught us about real awareness. And I could do a whole thing for you about the things that we as women must do. It so much resonates with what we're talking about here. One of the biggest opportunities that I had was sitting in one of those partners meetings where they were discounting me, and a new matter had come up. It was the largest matter to hit the federal docket in the court system in history in the civil case side. And the name partner said, we're going to need a partner to step up and do this, to run it. And it was going to be pretty much a nightmare, chaos. I love bringing calm to chaos. And so the meeting was over, people were chit-chatting and, sometimes being naysayers, and I walked into the partner's office with whom I had the relationship, and I said, I want to do that. I was the youngest partner. I wasn't even equity yet. And he looked at me and he said, and he could be a real cynic, and he said, really? And I said, yeah, I'm sure I can do it. And he said, okay. And he got up and he walked me down to the number one partner's office. I didn't really know him. And he had this huge office. And he brought me in. He said, this is Ariana Tadler. And he said, oh, hello, Ariana. Yes, I know. You've just joined our partnership. And I said, yes. And this partner said, well, she has something to say. And I said, I know what it takes to herd cats. And I also know how to get results. I also bring two things to the table: grace and tenacity. And those two things are not opposites. Those are my synergistic superpowers. And I got that gig, and boy, did we ring the bell. So it's seeing the opportunity, scanning the room, doing the assessment, kind of anchoring yourself. Some of you know I was a goalie. I was a New York State champion lacrosse goalie. Anchoring yourself, looking at the field, assessing what is that opportunity, how am I going to get to goal?
I'm laughing and giggling over here because, drop the mic right now. That was just so fantastic. And last rapid fire question for both of you as we close out is for the women who really want to embody that and they want to be able to feel like they can do that. We also need to know more of the sayings. We have to be quick with our sayings, like herding cats. We need to be ready, okay? But how can these women in this room, as they leave today, what is something that they can practice or do to embody that, even when they're not there yet? To really embody that sense of power and that sense of, is confidence to walk in and say, even when they're not ready for the job, I'm ready for the job because I know my future self is going to accomplish it. So what can they do?
Well, one of the tools that I use with my clients is guided visualizations. And you really have to see yourself and feel yourself in your mind's eye. So what does that future self look like? How does she feel? How does she dress? How does she show up? How does she walk into a room with confidence? And then what we do is, because we're humans and we have a mind that makes up a whole bunch of lies, that tells us, oh, you can't be that, you can't do that, you can't have that. So the next step would be to release any of those self-limiting beliefs and eliminate them. So imagine that those thoughts of you can't, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, whatever it is that pops into your mind is just like a soap bubble. And then you poke at it and it disappears. So if you don't have those thoughts, what's in your way?
I think I'm going to steal that. That was really good. Oh my gosh. So for me, right, I help people flex the mindset, pivot the skill, own the room. That's what I do. Where does that come from? It literally is from when I became a lacrosse goalie, which was by happenstance because I got cut from the varsity tennis team. And somebody put a lacrosse stick in my hand and said, let's go. And well, let's go. What I would also say to you, though, is I use that as a powerful image. I actually had a professional photographer take a picture of me with a lacrosse stick in the middle of Fifth Avenue so that I have that photo. And I did it recently so that I have it again for this new chapter. And then that naysayer, that voice, well, my bitch is named Hazel. And I tell Hazel to shut up and get out. I have no interest for Hazel. I have no tolerance for Hazel. And it's also helped me for the people in my life, including people whom I adore, people who are, you don't have a choice. They're coming with you whether you like it or not. For those people who can sometimes be difficult or challenging, I remind myself how critical it is to protect my peace, because I have served 4 generations of my family. I'm the only person with children. My grandmother died at 104. My dad died at 63. So I had 4 generations of people I was working with, or I guess working for. And now I say, I am the one who gets to make the choice of what will affect my peace. And if I draw the line and they don't like it, well, I guess they better look for another banker.
Well, that was incredible. Thank you so much, Vera, Ariana. This was so special for me. You know why. I just appreciate you so, so much. So thank you for being here today. So ladies, let's...
Thank you.
Thank you.